Hello Nintendo Wii here, welcome to episode 31 of Retro Gamer Week. This week we'll be taking a look at a game for the Sega Master System called Sagaia. I was really glad the other day to go back to this game shop that I really love in Birmingham. It's called Entertainment World and it's a fantastic shop. I'll see if I can find some video that I took the last time I was there. Unfortunately I kind of forgot to take any more this time, but it's an amazing shop. They have so much cool stuff there, and this is just one of the games that I picked up. I'll do a games I got recently video in a few weeks' time, perhaps, to show off some other cool stuff that I picked up from there. Anyway, this game, Sagaia, I'd never heard of it before. I picked it up on a whim just because it's a shooting game and it's on the Master System. You can't go too far wrong with that, really. This game turned out to be part of the Darius series, which is a really cool series of extremely hard shoot-'em-ups. I've only got a few of them. I've got one on the PS2, part of the Taito collection. I've got this one. I've got one on the Super Famicom, and I've played a bit of the arcade versions. I was quite surprised for the Master System. The graphics are actually pretty impressive. They even tried to do some of the fancy background graphics that you'd expect from a Mega Drive or a SNES. So really, apart from all the sprite flicker, it's a very smooth game. Doing a bit of reading up about the game, I actually found out that it was also on the Mega Drive, and this Master System version only ever came out in Europe and Brazil, which is a bit interesting, and it's very cool that I've managed to get myself a copy. I can't even say extremely challenging, it's ridiculously challenging. This is one of the hardest shoot-'em-ups I've ever played, and I've played a lot of shoot-'em-ups. This is more impossible than something like Toho or Ikaruga. It's just brutal. It's really, really hard. I don't know if that's because, as it's on the Master System, the amount of screen space that you've got to play with is reduced, but they just seem to throw no better way to put it than a crap ton of enemies that you just simply can't avoid. There's nothing you can do. They just come from every angle on the screen. No matter what power-up you've got, you're just instant death. Even with save states, it was just instant death after death after death. And I couldn't make it past the second level. That's how challenging this game is. Super frustrating. Just like all the other games in the Darius series, this one is full of random space fish, and because why not? Really don't know what more to say about this game. It just frustrated the hell out of me, to be honest. I played it for a good few hours trying to get somewhere in the game, and I only managed to get as far as level 2. It seems pretty interesting, and there does seem to be a lot of levels if you can actually get far enough to play any of them. After I completed the first level, it comes up with this sort of map system where you can actually choose which level to get to. I chose level B, and since then I've never been able to get as far as the level select screen again. So, there you have it. There are a few good points I have to say about the game. The controls are perfect, to be honest. There's no fault with that. They're super responsive. There's 2 buttons. There's a fire button and there's a button to drop bombs, just as you would expect from this kind of game. And it plays fine. It's just incredibly, incredibly difficult. The music as well is another really strong point. It definitely makes the game a little bit less frustrating to play, even though some of the music does repeat a little too often, and the bosses don't have their own music, but hey-ho, it's a Master System game. It's 8-bit, and I'd say this is still a lot more than you would expect from another 8-bit system like the NES, for example. If you compare this to a shooting game on the NES, this just blows it clean out of the water where these fish came from. But then, if you compare it to a shooting game on the PC Engine, which is another 8-bit system, then this looks like rubbish in comparison, so really it's an unfair comparison to make. So I've done a little bit of reading up about Sagaia, and it turns out there's actually quite a lot of different versions of the game. There's even one for the original Game Boy, and they all seem pretty true to the original arcade version, which was actually one of the really cool Darius arcade games which actually spans several screens and makes for a super widescreen experience. I was lucky enough to play one myself in Japan. I don't know which Darius game it was at the time, but I remember thinking, wow, this is just incredible. What a cool experience. Getting these giant speakers at the side blasting this music at you as your entire vision is filled with this constant bombardment of enemies and this crazy over-the-top gameplay. Unfortunately, the Master System and probably all the home console versions lose all of that special arcade feeling, but to be honest, what I've seen of the Master System version isn't too far off the arcade. It seems a lot more compact, obviously, because you're just squashed down to one screen instead of 3 really wide monitors. And the sound is obviously downscaled quite a bit, but they managed to keep the same theme tune intact. The basic gameplay is still intact, so overall I'd say it's a really good port. And it did come out 3 years after the arcade version, so there was plenty of time for them to make the port that they did. The Sega Master System version was actually ported by Natsume, who did the Harvest Moon games. Something I'm going to be doing from now on with Retro Gamer Week, I'm actually going to try and look back at the original review scores the game's got. I managed to find a review of Sagaia for the Master System from the awesome old video game magazine that I wish I owned physical copies of, called Mean Machines. And in this review here they actually gave it a fairly decent review and gave it 67%. So that's the score they gave it back then. What's the score I would give it today? Well, definitely not 67. I think it would score a lot lower than that, to be honest. It's extremely frustrating. I think I'll play it for maybe an hour, maybe 2, and then just completely forget about it forever. My score for Sagaia for the Master System is a fairly poor 43%. How I came up with that? I don't know. How did anyone come up with percentages for games? But that's beside the point. Clearly I'm giving this game a bit too much credit in the graphics department, because they say here that the graphics have, and I quote, small weedy sprites, lackluster graphics, and eye strain inducing flicker. And I can definitely stand by that flicker one, because after there's a certain amount of enemies on the screen it's pretty much impossible to see what's going on. And at the time it came out, bear in mind that I just picked it up the other day for, I think, a £5. It was £32.99p. But overall I'd say a pretty average shooter, with some fairly decent graphics and music for the time, for the system it was on, but really nothing too special, and there's a lot more better Darius games out there for you to enjoy. So thanks for watching episode 31, see you next week, goodbye.